Captain Jake Morrison stared at the endless black space through the main window of the UES Vigilant. Stars dotted the darkness like tiny diamonds. He had been doing this job for 5 years now, watching the empty space around Earth's solar system. Most days were quiet. Most days, nothing happened. "Captain, I'm getting something on the long-range sensors," said Lisa Carter from her position at the navigation station. She was young, maybe 25, with short brown hair and sharp eyes. That never missed anything. Jake walked over to look at her screen. Green dots moved slowly across the display. "What do you think it is?" "Looks like a trade convoy. 3 ships, maybe 4. They're coming from the direction of the Kelani systems." Jake nodded. The Kelani are one of the few alien races that Earth had good relations with. They were traders, not fighters. They sold Earth rare metals in exchange for art, music, and food. It was a fair deal that helped both sides. "Should we contact them?" asked Pete Rodriguez, the chief engineer. He was an older man with gray hair and hands that were always dirty from working on the ship's engines. "Let them pass," Jake said. "They know the rules. No coming closer than the asteroid belt without permission." Amy Walsh, the communications officer, looked up from her station. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange signals. The Kelani ships are transmitting on emergency frequencies." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Emergency frequencies meant trouble. What kind of signals? "It's hard to tell. The transmission is broken up, like they're having problems with their equipment. But I think they're asking for help." Jake had to make a decision. Earth's policy was clear. Stay neutral in the galactic war. Don't get involved in alien problems. But the Kelani were friends. They had never caused trouble for Earth. "Pete, how long would it take us to reach them?" "About 6 hours at full speed, Captain." Jake looked at his crew. They were good people. He trusted them with his life every day. Lisa had saved them from an asteroid field last year with her quick thinking. Pete had kept their engines running during a solar storm that should have killed them all. Amy had talked them out of a misunderstanding with some angry Vorthan patrol ships. "Amy, try to contact Earth Command. Tell them we have a possible emergency situation." Amy worked at her controls for several minutes. "I'm getting nothing, Captain. Too much interference from the solar wind." Jake made his choice. "Lisa, set course for the Kelani convoy. Pete, give me everything the engines can handle." A Vigilant turned and began moving toward the alien ships. Jake felt the familiar vibration of the engines working hard. Through the window, he could see the convoy now, tiny points of light. In the distance dot as they got closer, Jake could see that something was very wrong. The Kelani ships were damaged. Their hulls had holes in them. One ship was barely moving, trailing gas and debris behind it. "Captain, I'm getting a clear signal now," Amy said. "It's Ambassador Thekvara. He's asking for immediate assistance." Jake knew Thekvara. The Kelani had visited Earth many times as part of the trade missions. He was a good alien, as far as Jake could tell. He always treated humans with respect. "Put him through." The main screen flickered and showed the inside of a damaged Kelani ship. Thekvara appeared on the screen. His blue skin was darker than usual, and his large eyes looked scared. Behind him, Jake could see other Kelani working frantically at damaged controls. "Captain Morrison, thank the stars you are here. We need help. Our ships are failing." "What happened to you?" Jake asked. "We were attacked." "Our home world ... double quotes." Thekvara's voice broke. "Our home world is gone." Jake felt cold. "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "Destroyed. Consumed. Everything we knew, everything we built, it is no more. We are all that remains of our people." Lisa gasped. Pete muttered something under his breath. Amy's hands shook as she worked her controls. "Who did this?" Jake asked. Something new. Something terrible. They call themselves the Devourers. They are not like the Vorthen or the Nexus. They are machines, but they think. They learn. And they consume everything. Jake had heard rumors about strange attacks on the outer worlds. Ships disappearing. Planets going silent. But he had thought they were just stories told by scared traders. How many of you are there? 12,000 survivors from a world of 50 million. We have been traveling for 2 months, hiding, running. Our ships are breaking down. We need help. Jake looked at his crew. They were all looking at him, waiting for his decision. Earth's policy was clear. No involvement in alien wars. But these weren't soldiers. These were refugees. These were people who had lost everything. Pete, can we tow their ships? The small one, maybe. The others are too big for our ship. Captain, Amy said quietly, if we help them, we're breaking the neutrality agreement. Jake knew she was right. But he also knew that sometimes doing the right thing meant breaking the rules. Amy, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them we have a refugee situation. Tell them we're bringing the Kelani to the outer stations. Yes, sir. Jake looked back at the screen. Ambassador, we're going to help you. Follow us toward Earth. We'll get you to safety. Vekvara's large eyes filled with tears. Thank you, Captain. You may have saved what remains of our people. As the Vigilant began escorting the damaged Kelani ships toward Earth, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. For 30 years, Earth had stayed out of the galactic war. They had been safe in their little corner of Space Dot, but now the war was coming to them. Jake stood on the bridge, watching the stars, and wondered if humanity was ready for what was coming. The Devourers had destroyed an entire world. What could they do to Earth? He pushed the thought away. His job was to get the refugees to safety. Someone else would have to worry about the bigger questions. But deep down, Jake knew that the time for staying neutral was over. The war had found them, whether they wanted it or not. The space station orbiting Earth buzzed with activity. Dr. Karen Phillips walked through the medical bay, checking on the Kelani refugees. Many of them were hurt, not just in their bodies, but in their hearts. She had never seen such sadness in anyone's eyes, human or alien. Doctor, this one needs help, said Nurse Jenny Brooks, pointing to a young Kelani sitting alone in the corner. The alien was small, maybe a child, with pale blue skin and large eyes that stared at nothing. Karen knelt down beside the young Kelani. Hello, I'm Dr. Phillips. Can you tell me your name? The child looked up at her, but said nothing. Karen had learned some of the Kelani language during the trade missions. She tried speaking in their tongue, but the child just turned away. The youngster has not spoken since the attack, said a voice behind her. Karen turned to see Ambassador Vekvara walking toward them. The alien leader looked tired and old, even though Karen knew the Kelani lived much longer than humans. Ambassador, how are you feeling? My body heals, but my spirit remains broken. Dr. Phillips, I must speak with your leaders. They need to know what is coming. Karen nodded. She had been asking the same questions herself. I'll contact President Brooks. But first, can you tell me more about these Devourers? The more we know, the better we can prepare. Vekvara sat down heavily on one of the medical chairs. They are not like any enemy we have faced. The Vorthen are aggressive, but they can be reasoned with. The Nexus are cold, but they follow logic. The Devourers, they are something else. What do they want? Everything. They consume worlds, break them apart, use the materials to build more ships. They do not negotiate. They do not retreat. They simply consume. Karen felt a chill run down her spine. How many ships do they have? We do not know. Every time we destroy one, 2 more appear. It is as if they can build themselves faster than we can destroy them. 2 days later, Karen found herself in the Global Defense Council chambers on Earth. President Helen Brooks sat at the head of the long table, her face serious. General Frank Davis was there, along with Secretary of State Maria Santos and several other important people. Dr. Phillips, President Brooks said, "Please tell us what you've learned from the refugees." Karen stood up and activated the display screen. Images of the Kelani ships appeared, showing the damage they had suffered. The Devourers use weapons we've never seen before. They can cut through the strongest alien metals, like paper. But that's not the worst part. She clicked to the next image. This is what remains of the Kelani homeworld. The room fell silent. On the screen was a picture of empty space where a planet should have been. Only small pieces of rock floated where a world had once lived. 50 million people, Karen said quietly. Gone in 3 days. General Davis leaned forward. How is that possible? You can't just destroy a planet. They can, said Ambassador Vekvara, who had been invited to speak to the council. They have machines that tear apart the very atoms of matter. They turn planets into raw materials for their fleets. Secretary Santos spoke up. How long before they reach Earth? Based on their movement patterns, perhaps 6 months. Maybe less. The room erupted in worried voices. President Brooks banged her gavel to restore order. Ambassador, what do you suggest we do? You must join the war. The Vorthan and Nexus are putting aside their differences to fight this threat. Earth must help them. General Davis shook his head. We don't have the military strength to fight something like this. Our space fleet is tiny compared to theirs. Then we must build more ships, President Brooks said. How long would that take? Years, Davis replied. We don't have years. Karen had been thinking about this problem for days. Maybe we don't need to fight them the same way the aliens do. Everyone looked at her. What do you mean, Doctor? President Brooks asked. I've been studying the wreckage from the Kelani ships. The Devourer weapons are incredibly advanced, but they're also predictable. They're machines, which means they think like machines. They follow patterns. So maybe we can find a way to use that against them. Humans are good at thinking outside the box. We might be able to come up with solutions that the aliens haven't thought of. Admiral Roy Parker, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. Doctor, with respect, these things destroyed an entire planet. What makes you think we can do better than the aliens? Karen smiled. Because we're different. The Vorthan think like warriors. The Nexus think like computers. The Kelani think like traders. But humans ... we think like survivors. 3 weeks later, work began on what would become known as the Lazarus Protocol. Karen led a team of scientists from around the world, working with Kelani refugees who had technical knowledge. They set up their main laboratory in an underground facility in the Sahara Desert. The work was difficult. Human technology was centuries behind the aliens in many ways. But Karen had an idea. Instead of trying to match the Devourer's advanced weapons, they would try to understand how the machines thought. Look at this, said Dr. Bob Taylor, one of the engineers working on the project. He showed Karen a computer simulation. The Devourers don't just attack randomly. They have a system. First, they send scout ships to gather information. Then they bring in the harvester machines. Finally, they move the whole fleet to consume the planet. That's their weakness, Karen said. They're efficient, but they're also predictable. If we can disrupt their system at the right moment, we might be able to stop them, Bob finished. Meanwhile, Captain Jake Morrison was back in space, this time leading a small fleet of Earth's patrol ships. They had been reinforced with some Kelani weapons and defensive systems. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. Captain, I'm detecting movement at the edge of the system, Lisa Carter reported. 3 ships coming in fast. Jake felt his heart rate increase. Are they devourers? Unknown. They're not broadcasting any identification signals. All ships, battle stations. Amy, try to contact them. The 3 ships continued toward them, moving faster than any human ship could go. Jake could see them. Now on the main screen, dark shapes against the stars. No response to our signals, Captain, Amy reported. They're not slowing down, Pete said. Whatever they want, they're not here to talk. Jake made his decision. All ships open fire. The small Earth fleet launched everything they had. Missiles streaked through space toward the alien ships. Most of them were destroyed by defensive systems, but a few got through. One of the alien ships exploded in a ball of fire. The other 2 kept coming. They're targeting us, Lisa said. Brace for impact. The alien weapons hit the Vigilant like a hammer. The ship shook and lights flickered. Jake could smell smoke and burning electronics. Hall. Breach on Deck 3, Pete reported. We're losing atmosphere. Can we retreat? Not at this speed. They're faster than us. Jake looked at his crew. They had been through so much together. He couldn't let them die here. All ships ram them. It's the only way. Captain, no, Amy said, but Jake had already made his choice. He pushed the engines to full power and aimed the Vigilant at the nearest alien ship. The other Earth ships followed his lead. The collision was massive. Both ships exploded in a burst of light that could be seen from Earth. The 3rd alien ship, damaged by the explosion, limped away into deep space in the underground laboratory. Karen felt the ground shake as the explosion lit up the sky. She knew what it meant. The Devourers had found them. The war had begun. President Helen Brooks stood in the emergency session of the Global Defense Council, her face pale but determined. The attack on Captain Morrison's fleet had changed everything. Earth could no longer pretend the war would pass them by. The time for neutrality is over, she announced to the room full of world leaders. We need allies, and we need them now. General Frank Davis pulled up a star map on the main screen. Madam President, our intelligence suggests the Vorthan Empire has a Worth battle fleet 2 days from Earth. The Nexus Coalition has ships in the outer regions of our solar system. Are they here to help us or conquer us? Asked Secretary Santos. That depends on what we offer them, Brooks replied. Commander Mitchell, are you ready for your mission? Commander Steve Mitchell stood up. He was a career diplomat who had spent years learning alien languages and customs. Yes, Madam President, the U's horizon is ready to depart. We'll make contact with both factions. 2 days later, Steve found himself aboard a Vorthan warship that was 10 times the size of any human vessel. The walls were covered with weapons and battle decorations. Everything was designed to intimidate. War leader Gex was a massive alien, standing nearly 8 feet tall, with thick armor-like skin and 4 arms. His voice sounded like grinding metal when he spoke. So, the humans finally wish to join the war, Gex said. What can you soft creatures offer that we cannot provide ourselves? Steve had prepared for this moment. We offer something you've never had before. We offer hope. Gex laughed, a sound like breaking rocks. Hope? My warriors do not need hope. They need weapons and strength. Your warriors are dying, Steve said calmly. Your empire is falling back on every front. You've lost 12 worlds in the past 6 months. How many more can you afford to lose? The laughter stopped. Gex's 4 eyes focused on Steve with deadly intensity. You dare speak to me of loss, human? I speak of reality. The Devourers are winning because you're fighting them the same way you fight each other. But they're not like you. They don't have pride or anger or fear. They're machines, and machines can be beaten if you know how. Meanwhile, Major Kelly Thompson was having her own difficult conversation aboard a Nexus ship. The Nexus were very different from the Vorthen. They were tall and thin, with pale skin and large heads. They spoke in perfect unison, as if they shared one mind. "The human proposal is interesting," said the Nexus collective mind called Zara 9. "However, your species lacks the technological advancement necessary for meaningful contribution to the war effort." Kelly had expected this response. "Our technology may be primitive, but our thinking is not. We've studied the Devourer attack patterns. We believe we found a weakness." "Explain." Kelly activated a small holographic projector. "The Devourers coordinate their attacks through a network of command ships. If we can disrupt that network during a large harvesting operation, their entire fleet becomes vulnerable. This theory has been considered. The command ships are too well protected. Not if we attack them from the inside." The Nexus collective paused. Kelly could almost hear them thinking, communicating with each other in ways humans couldn't understand. "Elaborate." "Back on Earth, Dr. Karen Phillips was working around the clock in the desert laboratory. The Kelani refugees had provided crucial information about Devourer technology, but creating a weapon that could actually stop them was proving nearly impossible. "Doctor, I think I've found something," said Dr. Bob Taylor, looking up from his computer. "The Devourers use a form of quantum communication to coordinate their fleets. If we could create a virus that attacks their quantum network, it would spread throughout their entire fleet," Karen finished. "But we don't have quantum communication technology." "No, but the Nexus do. And the Vorthen have quantum disruptors. That could deliver the virus." Karen felt a spark of hope. "We'd need all three technologies working together. Human virus design, Nexus quantum communication, and Vorthen weapon systems. That's never been done before. The aliens don't share technology. Then we'll have to convince them that their survival depends on it." The breakthrough came when Lieutenant Dan Cooper, head of security for the laboratory, captured a Devourer infiltrator unit. The machine was small, about the size of a dog, but incredibly sophisticated. "It was trying to access our computer systems," Dan reported. "But look at this." He showed Karen a damaged circuit board from the machine. "It's not just trying to steal information. It's trying to learn how we think." Karen examined the circuit board under a microscope. "It's a learning algorithm. The Devourers are studying us, trying to understand human logic patterns." "Is that bad?" "It could be. Or it could be exactly what we need." Karen's mind raced with possibilities. If they're trying to understand us, that means they don't understand us yet. We're still unpredictable to them. Word of the discovery reached the diplomatic missions. Commander Mitchell used it to convince war leader Gex that humans could offer something unique in the war. "Your people fight with honor and strength," Mitchell said. "The Nexus fight with logic and precision. But humans fight with chaos and creativity. We do things that don't make sense to machines." Gex considered this. "Show me." Mitchell activated a recording of the battle where Captain Morrison had sacrificed his ship to destroy the Devourer scouts. A logical commander would have retreated to preserve his forces. Captain Morrison chose to attack, even though it meant certain death. The Devourers couldn't predict that choice. Interesting. But one act of bravery does not win a war. No, but 1,000 acts of unpredictability might. Major Thompson was making similar arguments to the Nexus Collective. Our chaotic thinking patterns could be exactly what you need to disrupt their network. Machines expect logical responses. Humans specialize in illogical ones. The proposal has merit, Zara 9 admitted. However, combining our technologies would require unprecedented cooperation. Then, let's do something unprecedented. The first joint operation was a disaster. Human, Vorthen, and Nexus technologies were completely incompatible. The quantum virus worked in theory, but couldn't be deployed effectively. The Vorthan weapons were too crude for precision work. The Nexus systems were too complex for humans to operate. "It's not working," Bob Taylor reported after the third failed test. "The technologies are too different." Karen refused to give up. "Then we don't combine the technologies. We combine the people." She proposed something revolutionary: integrated crews. Human creativity, Vorthan strength, and Nexus logic working together on the same ships. The aliens were horrified. "Impossible," Gex declared. "My warriors cannot work with machine lovers and weak humans." "Unacceptable," Zaranine added. "Biological entities introduce chaos into precise operations." "Exactly," Karen said. "Chaos is what we need." The debate continued for days. Meanwhile, long-range sensors detected the approach of a massive devourer. Fleet, 3,000 ships, led by planet-sized harvester platforms. They would reach Earth in less than a month. President Brooks made the final decision. "We're out of time for debate. Either we work together, or we all die separately." The first mixed crew was assembled on the U's horizon. Commander Mitchell remained in overall command, but his crew now included Vorthan warriors and Nexus technicians. The ship itself was upgraded with alien technology. "This is either going to work brilliantly or fail spectacularly," Mitchell said. As they departed for their first mission, Lieutenant Colonel Tony Martinez, a former police officer who had been recruited for the operation, grinned. "In my experience, the best plans always sound crazy at first." Their mission was to test the integrated approach against a small devourer force that had been detected near Jupiter. If they succeeded, it would prove that the alliance could work. If they failed, "Let's not think about failing," Mitchell said. As they approached the enemy ship's dot, the battle was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. Human unpredictability, Vorthan aggression, and Nexus precision created a fighting style that confused the devourers. The machines kept trying to analyze and predict the Allies' moves, but the combination of 3 different thinking patterns made prediction impossible. "They're hesitating," reported the Nexus technician. "Their response time is increasing." "That's our chance," Mitchell said. "Tony, you're the tactics expert. What do we do?" Tony had been studying the battle patterns. "In police work, when you're dealing with someone who's trying to outthink you, you stop thinking and start reacting. We need to be pure instinct." "Instinct is not logical," the Nexus officer protested. "Exactly. That's why it'll work." The battle ended with all 3 devourer ships destroyed and the horizon barely damaged. As they returned to Earth, Mitchell felt something he hadn't experienced in months. Hope. The alliance was working. Now they just had to scale it up to face 3,000 ships. "No pressure," Tony said with a smile. Mitchell smiled back. "None at all." The devourer fleet arrived like a storm of metal and death. 3,000 ships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the solar system, their dark holes blocking out the stars. At the center of the fleet were the harvester platforms, each one the size of a small moon-got Admiral Roy Parker stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant, Earth's new flagship. Around him, the Allied fleet prepared for battle. Human ships worked alongside Vorthan war vessels and Nexus cruisers. It was the largest space fleet in human history, but it still seemed tiny compared to the enemy. "All ships, this is Admiral Parker. Today we fight not just for Earth, but for every living thing in the galaxy. The devourers think they can consume. Use like they consume the others. Let's show them they're wrong." The first battle took place near Jupiter. Captain Lisa Carter, now commanding her own ship, led a squadron of fast attack vessels. Her job was to slow down the enemy advance and buy time for the main fleet to get into position. "They're not responding to our attacks the way they used to," reported her tactical officer. "They're adapting faster than before." Lisa wasn't surprised. The Devourers were learning machines. Every battle taught them something new about human tactics, but humans were learning too. Switch to pattern 7, she ordered. Random attack vectors, no coordination between ships. That's not standard procedure. The Devourers study standard procedures. Give them something they can't predict. The human ships began attacking in ways that made no sense to military minds. One ship would charge straight at the enemy, while another would circle around and attack from behind. A third would stop completely and wait for the enemy to come to it. The Devourers' response time began to slow. Their coordination became confused. They were trying to analyze patterns that didn't exist. "It's working," Lisa said with satisfaction. They can't predict chaos, but the victory was short-lived. More Devourer ships kept coming, and the human fleet was running out of ammunition and fuel. Lisa's squadron fell back toward Earth, fighting. A running battle all the way. On Earth, President Brooks watched the battle from the command center deep underground. The planet was preparing for the worst. Cities were being evacuated. Children were being moved to shelters. Everyone knew that if the fleet failed, Earth would be next. "How long can our ships hold out?" she asked General Davis. "Maybe 6 hours. After that, the Devourers will reach Earth's orbit." "And the Lazarus Protocol?" "Dr. Phillips says she needs at least 12 hours to finish the weapon." Brooks felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. "Then we need to buy her that time." In the desert laboratory, Karen Phillips worked frantically with her team. The weapon was almost ready, but it was incredibly complex. It required precise timing and coordination between human, Vorthan, and Nexus systems. "Doctor, we're getting reports of enemy infiltrators," said Lieutenant Dan Cooper. "They're trying to break into the facility." Karen looked up from her work. "How many?" "Maybe a dozen small units. We can handle them, but if they get inside, they can't get inside. This weapon is the only chance we have." Dan nodded grimly. "My team won't let them through." The battle for the laboratory was fierce but brief. The Devourer infiltrators were more advanced than the ones they had captured before. They moved like liquid metal, changing shape to slip through cracks and under doors. But Dan's security team was ready. They had studied the captured infiltrator and knew the machine's weaknesses. Electromagnetic pulses could disrupt their systems. High-temperature weapons could melt their adaptive armor. "They're retreating," Dan reported. "But they'll be back. With more units. How long do we have?" "Maybe an hour." Karen felt panic rising in her chest. The weapon needed at least 3 hours to complete. But then she had an idea. "Dan, what if we don't wait for them to come to us? What if we take the fight to them?" "You mean leave the laboratory?" "The weapon is portable. We can move it to a ship and complete the work in space." It was incredibly risky. If something went wrong during the move, the weapon could be destroyed. But if they stayed, the Devourers would eventually break through the defenses. "Do it," Karen decided. Meanwhile, in space, the battle was going badly. The Allied fleet had been pushed back to Earth's orbit. The moon was under attack by Devourer harvester platforms. Humanity watched in horror as their ancient companion began to be consumed. Captain Tony Martinez commanded a mixed crew aboard the UES Resistance. His ship was a strange combination of human, Vorthan, and Nexus technologies. It shouldn't have worked, but somehow it did. "Captain, the enemy is focusing on the moon," reported his Nexus navigator. "They appear to be using it as a source of raw materials. Can we stop them?" "The harvester platforms are too large and too well defended. A direct assault would be suicide." Tony had been a police officer before the war. He knew that sometimes you couldn't stop a crime, but you could make it too expensive for the criminal to continue. "What if we don't attack the platforms? What if we attack their supply lines?" His Vorthan weapons officer, a warrior named Keth, understood immediately. Hit the transport ships carrying materials from the moon to the construction ships. Exactly. Make them work for every piece of metal they steal. The plan worked better than Tony had hoped. The Devourers were used to overwhelming resistance with sheer numbers. They weren't prepared for guerrilla warfare. Small groups of allied ships would attack the transport convoys, destroy what they could, and disappear before the enemy could respond. But it was only a delaying tactic. The moon was still being consumed, and more Devourer ships kept arriving. On Earth, Nancy Green was organizing the evacuation of New York City. She had been a school teacher before the war, but now she was responsible for moving millions of people to safety. The transport ships are ready, reported her assistant. But we don't have enough fuel to get everyone out. Then we'll have to make choices, Nancy said, her heart breaking. Children and elderly first. Essential personnel last. What about the rest? Nancy looked out at the city where she had lived her entire life. We'll have to hope the fleet can protect them. In the industrial centers, Bob Taylor was overseeing the conversion of Earth's factories to military production. Every piece of equipment that could be turned into a weapon was being modified. Every person who could hold a tool was working 18-hour shifts. We're producing ammunition faster than we ever have, he reported to the president. But it's still not enough. What about the civilian volunteers? They're doing amazing work. People are giving up their personal belongings to be melted down for metal. Kids are collecting scrap. Everyone wants to help. It was humanity's finest hour, and potentially its last. As the battle raged in space, the people of Earth showed what they were truly made of. Not advanced technology or superior weapons, but courage and determination. The turning point came when Dr. Phillips successfully moved the Lazarus protocol to a ship in orbit. The weapon was finally ready, but it could only be used once. If it failed, there would be no second chance. Admiral Parker, this is Dr. Phillips. The weapon is ready for deployment. What do you need from us, Doctor? Get me close to the enemy. Command ship. The weapon has to be delivered manually. Parker felt his blood run cold. That's a suicide mission. Maybe, but it's the only way. Captain Lisa Carter volunteered to pilot the mission. I know those ships better than anyone. I can get you close. As the small ship approached the massive Devourer command vessel, Karen watched the battle raging around them. Human ships were falling like leaves in a storm. The moon was half consumed. Earth itself was beginning to be attacked. Doctor, we're in position, Lisa reported. But we're not going to make it out of here. Karen looked at the weapon she had spent months building. It was small, about the size of a briefcase, but it contained the hopes of every living thing in the galaxy. Then we'll have to make sure it works. She armed the device and began the activation sequence. Outside, the Devourer command ship loomed like a metal mountain. In a few seconds, they would know if humanity's last hope was enough. The weapon activated, with a pulse of energy that could be seen from Earth. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the Devourer ships began to shut down. The machines that had consumed countless worlds were finally silent, but the battle was far from over. The Devourers had backup systems, and they were already beginning to adapt. Humanity had won a victory, but the war was still raging. As Karen watched the enemy fleet trying to recover, she realized that the real battle was just beginning. The silence lasted for exactly 47 seconds. Then the Devourer ships began to wake up again. They're adapting to the weapon, Dr. Karen Phillips reported from the bridge of Lisa Carter's ship. The quantum virus is working, but they're developing immunity faster than we expected. Admiral Parker's voice cracked. Captain Jake Martinez stood at the main window of Aurora Station, watching the stars. The space station moved slowly around Earth, keeping watch for any danger from space. Jake had been doing this job for 5 years now. Most days were quiet and boring. Today would be different. The alarm started ringing at 08:00 hours. Jake ran to the main control room, where his team was already working at their computers. The screens showed something that made Jake's heart race. Huge ships were coming. Out of hyperspace near Jupiter. How many ships? Jake asked his second-in-command, Lieutenant Ben Carter. 37 ships, sir. The biggest ones are over 2 miles long. They're moving toward Earth at high speed. Jake looked at the screen. The alien ships were massive and dark. They looked like floating cities made of metal and weapons. Nothing Earth had ever built could match them. Send a message to U.S. PASACOM headquarters right away, Jake ordered. Tell them we have contact with alien ships. Hostile intent unknown. On the planet below, General Lisa Brooks was drinking her morning coffee when the emergency call came in. She had been waiting for this day for 30 years. The call she hoped would never come, but knew eventually would. General Brooks, this is Aurora Station. We have 37 alien ships entering our solar system. They're heading straight for Earth. Lisa put down her coffee cup. Her hands were steady, even though her heart was beating fast. How long until they reach Earth? At their current speed, about 6 hours, ma'am. Thank you, Captain Martinez. Keep watching them and report any changes. Lisa hung up the phone and walked to her safe. Inside was a red folder marked Eyes Only, Project Omega. She had read this folder many times over the years. Now she would finally have to use it. The alien ships slowed down as they got closer. To Earth, they formed a perfect circle around the planet, far enough away to avoid Earth's weapons, but close enough to show their power. The largest ship, painted in dark purple and gold, moved closer to Earth than the others. On board the alien flagship, Admiral Kekstar looked at the small blue planet below. He had done this same thing 43 times before. Each time, the story was the same. The aliens would show their power, demand surrender, and the planet would give up without a fight. Communications officer, open a channel to all frequencies on the planet below, Admiral Kekstar commanded. His voice was deep and rough like grinding stone. Channel open, Admiral. People of Earth, I am Admiral Kekstar of the Zephyrian Empire. Your planet is now under our control. You have 24 hours to surrender completely. All weapons must be destroyed. All military forces must stand down. Your leaders will come to our ships to sign surrender papers. If you refuse, we will destroy your cities one by one until you agree. You cannot fight us. You cannot win. Save your people and surrender now, the message ended. Around the world, people watched the alien ships in the sky with fear and wonder. Earth's leaders met in emergency sessions. Most wanted to surrender immediately. The alien ships were too big and too powerful to fight, but in a secret room deep underground, General Lisa Brooks opened the red folder. Inside was a single sheet of paper with one paragraph. Project Omega has been active for 30 years. Earth's real military and technology have been hidden from all observation. When alien contact occurs, maintain defensive posture for 72 hours. Do not surrender. Do not reveal true capabilities. Wait for further orders from Dr. Alex Turner. Lisa picked up a secure phone and dialed a number only 5 people on Earth knew. Dr. Turner, this is General Brooks. The aliens are here. Project Omega is now active. Understood, General. Begin the performance. Make sure they think we're exactly what we appear to be. Dr. Alex Turner hung up the phone in his laboratory. Around him, machines hummed quietly. These machines had been running for 30 years, waiting for this moment. Turner was not just any scientist. He was the man who had discovered how to fold space itself. 30 years ago, Earth had found a crashed alien scout ship in the desert. The technology inside had changed everything. But instead of announcing the discovery, a small group of scientists and military leaders had made a different choice. They would prepare in secret. They would let the world believe Earth was still, primitive and weak. When the aliens finally came, they would get a surprise. Turner walked to his main computer and typed in a long code. Across the Earth, in cities and deserts and mountains, hidden machines began to wake up. The machines had been sleeping for decades, waiting for this moment. On Aurora Station, Captain Jake Martinez watched the alien ships with growing worry. Earth space forces were preparing to fight, but their weapons looked like toys compared to the alien fleet. "Sir, we're getting orders from headquarters," Lieutenant Carter reported. "We're to maintain defensive positions, but not to attack unless fired upon." Jake nodded. "Tell the crew to prepare for battle, but nobody shoots until I give the order." Jake didn't know that his orders were part of a much larger plan. He didn't know that the primitive weapons on his station were just for show. He didn't know that hidden deep in the station's core was technology that could tear holes in space itself. Admiral Kekstar watched Earth's military forces scramble to respond. Their ships were small and slow. Their weapons were simple missiles and energy beams. He had seen the same thing on every planet he had conquered. "How long until they surrender?" asked his second-in-command, Captain Mordek. "Usually they give up within 12 hours. Sometimes they try to negotiate, but they always surrender in the end. This planet will be no different." But Admiral Kekstar was wrong. This planet would be very different indeed. 12 hours after the first alien message, small shuttles began leaving the big ships. They flew down to Earth's major cities like New York, London, Moscow, and Beijing. The shuttles were sleek and silver, moving without any sound through the air. Secretary of State Rachel Davis stood in the United Nations building in New York, watching through the window as one of the shuttles landed in Central Park. She had been chosen to speak for all of Earth's governments. Her hands shook slightly as she adjusted her jacket. "Remember," General Brooks had told her over the phone, "act scared but not too scared. Make them think we're weak but willing to talk. And no matter what you see or hear, don't mention Project Omega." Rachel nodded to herself. She had been briefed on the plan, though she didn't understand all of it. She knew that Earth's military was much stronger than it appeared. She knew that the old missiles and fighter jets the aliens could see were just a show. But she didn't know how much stronger Earth really was. The alien shuttle opened with a soft hiss. 3 figures stepped out. They were tall, maybe 7 feet, with gray skin and large black eyes. They wore dark robes that seemed to shimmer in the sunlight. The leader wore a golden collar around his neck. "I am Ambassador Velinux," the alien said in perfect English. "I speak for Admiral Kekstar and the Zephyrian Empire. Where are your leaders?" Rachel walked forward with a small group of diplomats from different countries. "I am Rachel Davis, Secretary of State of the United States. We speak for all the nations of Earth." Ambassador Velinux looked at the humans with what might have been amusement. "You are so small, so primitive. Do you really think you can negotiate with us?" "We hope to find a peaceful solution," Rachel replied. "Perhaps we can arrange something that benefits both our peoples." The alien laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "There is no negotiation. There is only surrender. But my admiral is curious about your species. He has given you more time to consider your position." Meanwhile, in a bunker beneath the Pentagon, Commander Steve Johnson was coordinating with resistance cells around the world. On his screen, he could see reports from every major city. The aliens had landed in all of them, and they were all saying the same thing. "Sir, the aliens are conducting scans of our military bases," reported his intelligence officer, Captain Mary Lopez. They're cataloging our weapons and defenses. Good, Steve said. Make sure they see exactly what we want them to see. The scans were picking up Earth's real, military, old nuclear missiles from the 1990s. Fighter jets that looked impressive, but were actually from the 2020s, and ground forces with conventional weapons. The aliens were recording everything, building a complete picture of Earth's defenses. What they didn't see were the hidden bases deep underground. They didn't detect the real weapons stored in pocket dimensions. They couldn't scan the advanced technology that had been carefully shielded from all sensors. In his laboratory, Dr. Alex Turner worked with his partner, Dr. Amy Foster. They were making final adjustments to the dimensional gateway network. The machines around them hummed with power that could tear holes in the fabric of space itself. How long until we're ready? Amy asked, checking the power levels on her screen. Another 36 hours, Alex replied. The gateways need to be perfectly synchronized. If we're off by even a microsecond, the whole system could collapse. Amy nodded. She had been working on this project for 15 years. She knew that humanity's survival depended on getting it right. Back in space, Captain Jake Martinez watched the alien ships from Aurora Station. The station's weapons were pointed at the enemy fleet, but Jake knew they were useless. The aliens' shields were too strong, and their weapons too powerful. "Sir, we're getting a communication from the alien flagship," Lieutenant Carter reported. "Put it on screen." Admiral Kekstar's face appeared on the main screen. His skin was dark gray, almost black, with silver markings around his eyes. "Captain Martinez, I know your name and your position. Your station has weapons pointed at my ships." "We're maintaining defensive positions only," Jake replied. "We haven't fired on you." "Wise choice. Your weapons cannot harm us anyway." "I am curious. Why do you continue to resist? Your planet's defenses are primitive. Your technology is centuries behind ours. Why not surrender now and save your people?" Jake felt anger rising in his chest. "Because this is our home. We won't give up without a fight." The alien admiral seemed amused. "Very well. Continue your hopeless resistance. It will make no difference in the end." The screen went dark. Jake turned to his crew. "Double the watch rotations. Keep monitoring their ships. And prepare the weapons, even if they can't do much damage." What Jake didn't know was that his station's real weapons were hidden in a pocket dimension, waiting for the right moment to appear. The nuclear missiles the aliens could see were just decoys. The real Aurora Station was a fortress that could destroy entire fleets around the world. Similar scenes were playing out. Earth's military leaders were acting scared and desperate. They were moving their best weapons into position, weapons that looked impressive but were actually decades old. They were preparing for a fight they appeared to have no chance of winning. In London, General Patricia Wells ordered her forces to surround the alien landing site. Her soldiers carried rifles and rocket launchers that looked modern, but were actually museum pieces compared to humanity's real weapons. In Moscow, General Boris Petrov was doing the same thing. His tanks and aircraft were the best that Earth appeared to have, but they were really just props in a carefully planned show. The aliens watched all of this with growing confidence. Every scan confirmed what they already believed. Earth was a primitive world with crude weapons and simple technology. The humans were brave, but foolish to resist. Ambassador Valinex met with Rachel Davis again the next day. This time, they sat across from each other in a conference room in the UN building. The alien's large black eyes studied the human woman carefully. "Your military is positioning itself for battle," Valinex observed. "Do you really think your primitive weapons can harm our ships?" Rachel tried to look worried. "We have to try something. We can't just give up our freedom without a fight." "Your nuclear weapons are old and slow. Your fighter aircraft are toys. Your ground forces carry weapons that we stopped using 1,000 years ago. Why do you persist in this foolishness? Because we have hope, Rachel said. Maybe we can find a way to win. Valinox made a sound that might have been laughter. Hope is for species that have a chance. You have none. But my admiral finds your spirit entertaining. He has decided to extend your deadline by another 24 hours. Why? Rachel asked. Because he enjoys watching primitive species struggle before they surrender. It amuses him. Rachel felt real anger at the alien's words, but she kept her face calm. Thank you for the extra time. Use it wisely. Prepare your surrender documents. Choose which of your leaders will come to our ships to sign them. And remember, when the deadline passes, we will demonstrate our power by destroying one of your cities. Choose which one you can afford to lose. As the alien left, Rachel sat alone in the conference room. She thought about her daughter, who was studying in college in California. She thought about the millions of people who had no idea that their world was about to change forever. But she also thought about the confidence in General Brooks' voice when she said, "Trust the plan, Rachel. Everything will be different in 48 hours." In his hidden laboratory, Dr. Turner looked at the countdown timer on his main screen. 36 hours and 17 minutes until the dimensional gateways would be ready. 36 hours until the aliens would learn the truth about humanity. He hoped it would be enough time. The final hour had arrived. Admiral Kekstar stood on the bridge of his flagship, looking down at the blue planet below. Earth's leaders had refused to surrender. Now he would show them what happened to worlds that defied the Zephyrian Empire. Target the city called New York, he ordered his weapons officer. Charge the main plasma cannon to 50% power. We'll destroy half the city to show them our strength. Yes, Admiral. Plasma cannon charging now. The massive alien ship moved slowly over New York City. 8 million people looked up at the dark shape blocking out the sun. Many were running, trying to escape. Others stood frozen in fear. The ship was so large, it cast a shadow over the entire city. On Aurora Station, Captain Jake Martinez watched helplessly as the alien flagship prepared to fire. All weapons, target that ship, he ordered. Sir, our missiles won't even scratch their shields, Lieutenant Carter protested. I don't care. We have to try something. The station's old nuclear missiles launched toward the alien ship. The aliens easily destroyed them with small laser weapons. It was like watching children throw rocks at a tank dot in the UN building, Secretary. Of State Rachel Davis stood with diplomats from around the world. They could see the alien ship through the windows, its weapons beginning to glow with deadly energy. This is it, said the British ambassador. We should have surrendered when we had the chance. Rachel looked at her watch. The deadline was in 3 minutes. She thought about General Brooks' words. Trust the plan. Deep underground, Dr. Alex Turner sat at his control station. Dr. Amy Foster stood beside him, her hand on the activation switch. Around them, machines that had been hidden for 30 years hummed with incredible power. All stations report ready, Amy said, reading from her screen. The dimensional gateways are synchronized and stable. Energy levels? Alex asked. At maximum. We're ready to begin. Alex looked at the countdown timer. 2 minutes and 30 seconds until the alien deadline. He picked up a secure phone and called General Brooks. General, this is Dr. Turner. We are ready to begin the revelation. Understood. Begin Operation Skyfall. Alex hung up and turned to Amy. Initialize the gateway network. Let's show them what humanity can really do. Amy flipped the switch. Above New York City, the air itself began to change. The sky started to shimmer like heat waves on a hot day. Then cracks appeared in the air, like someone had broken a giant mirror. The cracks spread wider and wider, making a sound like thunder. "Admiral." Kekstar stared at the strange sight. "What is happening? Report." "Sir, we're detecting massive energy readings from the planet's surface," his science officer reported. "The energy levels are impossible. Our sensors can't measure them properly." "Impossible? These primitives don't have that kind of technology." The cracks in the sky grew larger. Through them, something huge and dark could be seen moving. The alien crew watched in growing alarm as the fabric of space itself seemed to tear open. "Admiral," the science officer sighed, his voice shaking. "Something is coming through." The first human ship emerged from the dimensional gateway like a sea monster rising from the depths. It was massive, larger than any of the alien vessels. Its hull was dark gray with blue markings, and it bristled with weapons that seemed to bend the light around them. The words USS Liberty were written on its side in letters 100 feet tall. By the void, Admiral Kekstar whispered, "What is that thing?" More ships were coming through the gateway. The USS Defiance, a battleship, so large it had its own gravity field. The USS Sovereign, a carrier that launched fighters moving at impossible speeds. The USS Thunderbolt, whose weapons were already charging with energy that made the air itself glow. Captain Jake Martinez stared at the scene from Aurora Station. His mouth was open in shock. Where did those ships come from? "Sir, we're getting a transmission from the lead ship," Lieutenant Carter reported. The main screen lit up with the image of a human man in a uniform Jake had never seen before. The man was middle-aged with gray hair and steady eyes. His uniform was dark blue with silver rank insignia. "This is Admiral Robert Hayes of the United Earth Defense Force," the man said calmly. "All Earth defense stations, stand down. We'll handle this situation." Jake could only stare. Who are you?" "Someone who's been waiting 30 years for this moment, Captain. Maintain your position and observe." The dimensional gateway above New York was still growing larger. More ships were emerging every few seconds. Destroyers, cruisers, and vessels that didn't fit any category Jake knew. Some of the ships were so advanced, they seemed to be made of pure energy. Around the world, the same scene was playing out. The sky above London split open to reveal more human ships. The same thing happened over Moscow, Beijing, Tokyo, and every other major city. Humanity's real fleet was emerging from hiding. Admiral Kekstar watched in horror as his fleet was suddenly outnumbered 3-1. The human ships were not just larger, they were clearly more advanced. His sensors were picking up technology that shouldn't exist. "How many ships are there?" he demanded. "Over 300, sir, and more are still coming through the gateways." "This is impossible. Our intelligence reports said this planet was primitive." Ambassador Volinix rushed onto the bridge. "Admiral, the humans have been lying to us. Everything we saw was fake." "What do you mean, fake?" "Their weapons, their technology, everything. They've been pretending to be primitive while hiding their real capabilities." Admiral Kekstar felt something he hadn't experienced in 50 years of conquest: fear. "Open a channel to the lead human ship." The screen showed Admiral Hayes again. This time, he was not alone. Behind him stood other human officers, all wearing the same unknown uniform. "Admiral Kekstar," Hayes said pleasantly, "I believe you wanted to speak with Earth's leaders." What are you?" Kekstar stammered. "We're the people you thought you were going to conquer. But as you can see, we're not as primitive as you believed. This is impossible. Our scouts surveyed this system 30 years ago." Hayes smiled. "Yes, we know. We found the wreckage of your scout ship in the Nevada desert. Thank you for the technology, by the way. It helped us improve our own designs considerably." The alien admiral felt his world crumbling around him. You've been preparing for us this whole time? Of course. Did you think we would just sit here and wait to be conquered? We've been watching the galaxy for decades, Admiral. We know about your empire and your methods. We've been preparing a warm welcome. On Earth's surface, people were coming out of their homes and buildings to stare at the sky. The human fleet blocked out the sun over every major city. The ships were beautiful and terrible, like flying cathedrals of war. Dr. Turner spoke into his microphone. All Gateway commanders, report status. New York Gateway stable and operational. London Gateway stable and operational. Moscow Gateway stable and operational. One by one, the reports came in. Every gateway was working perfectly. The human fleet was fully deployed. Phase 1 complete, Amy reported. The fleet is in position. Alex smiled. 30 years of work, and it's finally paying off. Admiral Kekstar tried to regain his composure. Even if you have more ships, you're still just one primitive planet. The Zephyrian Empire has thousands of worlds. Had Admiral Hayes corrected. We've been liberating them while you were busy conquering new ones. Your empire is much smaller than you think. Impossible. Check your long-range communications, Admiral. When did you last receive a report from the Altair system? Or the Vega colonies? Or any of the 12 systems your empire controlled in the outer spiral? Kekstar's communications officer was frantically checking his equipment. Sir, we're not receiving any signals from the outer territories. The communication network appears to be down. Not down, Hayes said. Captured. We've been very busy for the past 30 years. Captain Jake Martinez listened to the conversation with growing amazement. Earth had not just been preparing to defend itself. It had been fighting a secret war across the galaxy. Now, Admiral Hayes continued, let's discuss your surrender. Our surrender? Kekstar could barely speak. Yes. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. Resistance will be met with overwhelming force. The alien admiral looked at his own fleet, now surrounded by human ships that dwarfed his largest vessels. His sensors were showing weapon systems that operated on principles he couldn't understand. Energy readings that broke his instruments. Shield technology that seemed to warp space itself. You would destroy us? He asked. Only if you force us to, Hayes replied. We prefer to capture our enemies alive. They make better sources of intelligence. Admiral. Kekstar realized he had no choice. His proud fleet, which had conquered 43 worlds, was helpless against these impossible human ships. All ships, he said quietly, power down weapons, prepare to be boarded. The age of human conquest had begun. Admiral Kekstar's order to surrender was met with silence from his fleet. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Captain Mordek, his second in command, stepped forward. Admiral, we cannot surrender to these primitives. The Empire would never forgive. U.S. Look around you, Kekstar snapped. We're surrounded by ships that are bigger and more advanced than anything we've ever seen. But, sir, we are Zephyrian warriors. We've never been defeated. Other officers on the bridge began to murmur agreement. The idea of surrendering to a species they had come to conquer was too much for their pride to accept. Captain Ryan Clark, commanding the massive human dreadnought USS Retribution, watched the alien fleet through his bridge windows. His ship was over 3 miles long, armed with weapons that could crack a planet in half, but he hoped he wouldn't need to use them. Sir, we're detecting increased energy readings from the alien ships, reported his tactical officer, Lieutenant Commander Sandra White. They're bringing their weapons back online. Ryan sighed. I was hoping they would be smarter than this. Open a channel to Admiral Hayes. Admiral Hayes here. Sir, the aliens are powering up their weapons. It looks like they're going to fight. Understood, Captain Clark. All ships, prepare for combat. Remember, we want prisoners, not wreckage. Use minimum force necessary. Ryan turned to his crew. You heard the Admiral. Prepare for battle, but try not to completely destroy them. We need some of them alive for questioning. On the alien flagship, Admiral Kextar watched his officers. Prepare for what he knew would be a hopeless battle. But Zephyrian pride was stronger than common sense. All ships, he announced over the fleet communication system, attack formation. Show these humans what it means to challenge the Zephyrian Empire. The 37 alien ships moved into battle. Formation. Their weapons began to glow with deadly energy. Plasma cannons charged to full power. Missile tubes loaded with their most powerful warheads. Fire. Admiral Kextar shouted. The alien fleet unleashed everything they had. Plasma beams that could melt through solid rock. Missiles that could destroy entire cities. Energy weapons that had never failed to destroy any enemy. The human ships just sat there and took it all. Captain Ryan Clark watched the alien weapons strike his ship's shields. The impact barely registered on his instruments. Damage report, he said calmly. No damage, sir. Their weapons can't penetrate our shields. Return fire. Target their engines and weapon systems. I want them disabled, not destroyed. The USS Retribution fired a single shot from its main gravity cannon. The weapon didn't use energy or physical projectiles. Instead, it manipulated gravity itself, creating a crushing force that could compress matter to the size of a marble. The alien flagship's shields collapsed instantly. The gravity wave hit the ship's hull and began to squeeze it like a giant hand. Metal bent and twisted. The ship's weapons were crushed beyond repair. Admiral, screamed the Zephyrian tactical officer. Our weapons are gone. The hull is compromised. All around them, the human fleet was demonstrating weapons that shouldn't exist. The USS Sovereign fired temporal disruptors that aged enemy ships until their metal turned to dust. The USS Thunderbolt used energy weapons that seemed to ignore the laws of physics. Lieutenant Commander Kelly Wright led a squadron of human fighters from the USS Liberty. Her ships moved through space at speeds that would have killed any normal pilot, but Kelly and her pilots were not normal. They had been enhanced with technology that let them survive forces that would turn ordinary humans into paste. Phoenix Squadron, engage the alien fighters, Kelly ordered. Remember, we want some of them intact for study. The alien fighters were fast and deadly, but they moved like they were standing still compared to the human ships. Kelly's fighters zipped between enemy missiles like a dancer, then fired a single shot that disabled an alien ship without destroying it. This is too easy, her wingman, Captain Mike Foster, complained over the radio. I thought these guys were supposed to be dangerous. They are dangerous, Kelly replied, spinning her ship to avoid a plasma beam. Just not dangerous enough. The battle was not a battle at all. It was a demonstration. The human fleet systematically disabled every alien ship without breaking a sweat. Weapons that had conquered 43 worlds were useless against human technology. Admiral Kextar watched his proud fleet being torn apart. In less than 5 minutes, half his ships were disabled and drifting in space. The other half were surrounded by human vessels that could have destroyed them with a thought. Sir, his communications officer reported, we're being hailed by the human admiral again. Admiral Hayes appeared on screen, looking completely calm. Admiral Kextar, are you ready to surrender now? Or do you need us to disable the rest of your fleet first? How? Kextar asked weakly. How do you have this technology? We learned from the best teachers, Hayes replied. Your own scouts, 30 years ago, plus a few other species that tried to conquer us over the years. We're very good at learning from our mistakes. Other species? Oh yes. You're not the first aliens to visit Earth. The Altarians tried to invade us 15 years ago. A vegan empire sent a fleet 10 years ago. They all made the same mistake you did. They underestimated humanity. On Aurora Station, Captain Jake Martinez could only stare at the battle unfolding around him. His primitive space station was now revealed to be something much more advanced. Hidden weapons had emerged from pocket dimensions. His crew was wearing uniforms he had never seen before. "Sir," Lieutenant Carter said, "we're getting new orders from Fleet Command." "Fleet Command?" Jake asked, confused. "The real Fleet Command?" "Sir, the one that's been hidden for 30 years. Jake looked at the orders on his screen. They were signed by Admiral Hayes and carried the seal of the United Earth Defense Force, an organization Jake had never heard of until today. "We're to help coordinate the prisoner transfer," Carter explained. "The entire alien fleet is surrendering." As Jake watched, human ships began docking with the disabled alien vessels. Teams of soldiers in advanced armor boarded each ship, taking the alien crews prisoner. The operation was smooth and professional, like they had done it many times before. Dr. Alex Turner stood in his underground laboratory, watching the battle through satellite feeds. 30 years of preparation had led to this moment. 30 years of hiding humanity's true capabilities had paid off. "The fleet is performing perfectly," Dr. Amy Foster reported. "All systems are stable. The dimensional gateways are holding without any problems." "Good," Alex replied. "Begin Phase 2. Open. Gateways to the outer systems. It's time to show the galaxy what we can really do." Above Earth, new dimensional rifts began to open. But instead of ships coming through, ships were going out. Human fleets that had been hiding in parallel dimensions for decades were finally emerging to take their place in the galaxy. The USS Vengeance, a ship so large it had its own small moon as a base. The USS Infinity, whose weapons could destroy entire star systems. The USS Freedom, which carried technology that could terraform dead worlds in a matter of days. Fleet after fleet emerged from the gateways and spread out across the galaxy. Each one was heading to a different star system, carrying the message that humanity had arrived and would not be conquered. Admiral Kekstar was transferred to the USS Retribution as a prisoner. As he was led through the ship's corridors, he could see technology that made his own ships look like crude toys. Humans walked past him wearing uniforms that seemed to be made of living metal. The ship itself seemed to be alive, with walls that pulsed with energy. "Where are you taking me?" he asked his guards. "To a holding cell," replied Sergeant Dan Mitchell. "Don't worry, it's very comfortable. We're not barbarians." But how? "Do you have all this? Your planet was supposed to be primitive." Dan laughed. "Primitive? We've been traveling to other galaxies for 20 years. We've been studying alien technology for decades. We've been preparing for this day since before you were born." "Other galaxies?" "Oh, yeah. There's a whole universe out there, Admiral. Your little empire is just one small part of it. And now it's about to get much smaller." As the last alien ship was captured, Admiral Hayes broadcast a message to the entire galaxy. It was transmitted on every frequency, in every language spoken by every known species. "This is Admiral Robert Hayes of the United Earth Defense Force. To all species in the galaxy, we bring you greetings from humanity. We have come to end the age of conquest and slavery. Any species that enslaves others will be freed. Any empire that conquers peaceful worlds will be stopped. The galaxy is about to change, and humanity will be the ones changing it." The message ended, but its impact would be felt across the entire galaxy. Humanity had revealed itself, and nothing would ever be the same. On Earth, people were coming out of their homes to cheer the victory. The alien threat was over. But more than that, they had learned that their species was not weak or primitive. They were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy, and they had kept it secret for 30 years. The age of human expansion had begun. 3 days after the battle, Ambassador Volinix sat in a clean white room aboard the USS Sovereign. The room was comfortable, with soft chairs and warm lighting. It didn't look like a prison cell, but he knew he was a prisoner. Across from him sat a human man in a dark blue uniform. The man was about 40 years old, with short brown hair and calm eyes. His name tag read Director Matt Sullivan. "I hope you're comfortable, Ambassador," Matt said politely.